Today is December the 18th, 2021, and this is our Eastern Desiderata meeting. And I just asked for Hugh if he can open up with his findings or anything he knows about the new variant in regards to HIV. So, and then we can go on from there.
Yeah, don't say the V word. It's December the 19th for us on more easterly than
gotcha.
you. But so, yeah, I keep on looking. I haven't found anything, but my spidey senses are still tingling as much as they were last week. I just keep on getting this voice in the back of my head saying HIV, 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 because I think I told you all the stuff about this Indian paper that came out right at the beginning. Said it was amazing resemblance of the first variant to had amazing features that were similar to HIV. And if you look at the symptoms of this G variant, they are the same as as an HIV infection with the same time periods. It looks identical, even down to mouth ulcers and stuff. And so it's like, I don't know, man. If you had told me, if I knew nothing else other than the symptoms, and this thing came from Africa, I would say, oh man, that's a chimera right there. It's I mentioned about how they found well, the press was speculating about, hey, it's probably combined with a flu virus, and I'm like, it's just so Western. It's so self-indulgent and conceited to say like, oh, the flu, because everybody knows that Africa is full of a cold, because here's guys sniffling in London, and they automatically assume because people are sniffling in London in winter, Africans must be doing that too in the middle of summer, because Africans are all sniveling with a cold like they do in England. It's like, you fucking conceited arseholes, man. It's just the cold isn't in Africa. Get over it. I'll tell you what's in Africa. There's HIV from fucking Cape to Cairo, every second person. And so it's just a perfect place for an immunocompromised person to incubate this thing, and it's very likely to have features of HIV because it's merged with it. I mean, why? It's so damned obvious. And I'm looking at all the scholarly papers and stuff, and just see more and more hints that there's they're components of HIV. And no one's saying it. I can't find any academic or professional that's making this connection. And I'm just thinking, they all go and, this is great news, because it's going to, it's not, the symptoms are mild, and it's going to tear around the world and replace the other variants. Okay, first of all, that is absolute fucking horseshit. The evidence is already in that your past infection history has no bearing on whether you can get infected by this. In fact, you can get reinfected by this same variant. So it's like, what is wrong with these fucking people? We cannot reach herd immunity. Therefore, all the measures that governments are taking are useless. They only make sense if you're trying to get to herd immunity, or one thing is that you're trying to keep the hospitals, beds free, or keep lower the pressure on the ICU units. But that doesn't make any sense in this case, because the doubling thing is about, it has an R value about 6 or something. So it's like, it's going around like measles. There's no ways you can do jabs against it in time. And that's the wrong fucking jabs. If anything, you're doing harm. You're basically priming people's immune system for the wrong variant. And then you have antigenic sin. It means that the T cells respond with the wrong fucking war. So it's just absolutely insane. I think, like, how can everybody be this insane? And so, yeah, it's so we're getting this message like, oh, this is good news. It's going to be the end of the pandemic. It's going to drive the others out. Why? Well, it takes a little broom and sweeps out the other variants. It does a little Darwinian race and says, oh, I'm going to infect Mike. No, it's my chance to infect Mike. Oh, we'll have a little fight, shall we? And we just like come outside, like the variants don't do that, man. It's not a Darwinian race. You can be infected by 5 of them together, you moron. So they carry, and then these people saying like, you know, all these mixed messages that all come down to the government is trying to make a second-class citizen of pariahs from refuse pricks, and it makes no sense because they're saying, oh, you're irresponsible to the community, but particularly with this ovariant, it offers no protection. I posted the things from Denmark. That it is a pandemic of the fully okay. So the fully are running around just about fucking with hate speech and fucking just about rounding people up and putting them in gas chambers. And he's saying like, we just said that it's you the problem because you got a license from the government to be a fool, and so everybody's running around thinking they've got protection, and presidents are saying, we got protection, you've got protection, it protects you, and saying you're a fucking liar. And then the press doesn't say, oh, he's a fucking liar. They say, oh, it's a half truth. It's a half truth. If Trump had said that, he would have been eviscerated. But because it's Biden, now it's like, oh no, it's a half truth. We always give him the benefit of the doubt. He fucking lied, and people are going to get fucking beaten up with this. This is going to have serious consequences and violence on the streets. But does the fact checkers or the left-wing fucking media actually say anything about this? It's like, no, they give him the benefit of the doubt. So it's just fucking moronic, this whole thing. And all I got to say to you is, I'm not a virologist, I'm not a doctor, but I've seen this shit. I lived through this shit. I've given up trying to tell people that HIV was a bioweapon, was manufactured in a lab, and so's this thing from Wuhan. So it's like, guys, it's like, get over yourselves. It's like, you've got to start believing in conspiracy theories. And it's like, you see, if you grew up in South Africa like I did, you learn to get conspiratorial and paranoid. You have to survive, because it's all lies and manipulation, and it's dangerous shit. And so you learn to be paranoid and conspiratorial. So, that's the air you breathe if you grow up in something like apartheid. You can disappear in the night. And so, when I came to the civilized world and I realized nobody did conspiracies, I was kind of shocked, especially because they're saying like, of course you can see that there are conspiracies everywhere in these countries. That go and do yourself a favor. Go and look up Wouter Basson and the Project Coast. Now, Wouter Basson got off with a slap on the wrist, right? He didn't confess up to the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, okay, which is what you needed to do to get indemnity, and still he got off. He hasn't been prosecuted today. That's like Dr. Mengele of getting off with nothing, not even a fine. Okay, so it's like, how does that happen? There must have been some pretty heavy-hitting phone calls to South Africa.
I can't hear anyone.
The
I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah. Oh, hi, Petra. Is it Petra?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can hear you, Petra. I don't know if you can hear me.
Oh, no, she dropped off again.
She dropped.
So anyway, all I'm saying to you is, don't take medical advice from me, but it's just be a little bit cautious. How much trouble does it take to get a false negative? If you're absolutely wrong and stuff, it doesn't really matter. What have you lost? Christmas? It's like, think of the fucking downside. Think of the fucking downside. If this is airborne HIV, think of what that means to the planet. It's just unthinkable. So if you get HIV today, it's not an automatic death sentence. But a pandemic of HIV, it's very expensive drugs, very, very intensive on the healthcare system. It would be a terrible, terrible thing for the world. And it's like 90% of people might get this variant. Imagine a year down the road where people start getting funny diseases and weird cancers and stuff. You're going to have a look at, how London and New York and LA and stuff was wiped out by the AIDS epidemic in the 80s, and all the gay community, they were dropping like flies. All the clubs and everything, all the gay scene just closed because the people died. I mean, if you think of that on a scale, it's just a little bit of caution and just a little bit of less shit. I mean, does everything have to be political and everything have to be normalized so that there are no conspiracies? It's like, guys, this is my reading of the whole situation. They're doing bioweapons research all the fucking time, all over. The reason why they're not making a bigger song and dance out of it, because they're all in it. It was bioweapons research, or most dual-use research in Wuhan, and it was with HIV too, and so it's most likely an accidental leak. But this variant could worry because the two are so similar. There could actually be a chimera of the two of them. Take it seriously. What's the harm? I might cost you Christmas or something, but by the same token, right? This is what I'm worried about: is they're getting more and more reckless. So they all say, oh, it was a miracle of how quickly they managed to test these drugs. And say, don't be an idiot. They didn't do a miracle of compression of the testing cycle. They just fucking cut it out. They just fucking didn't do any testing. So it looks like they got lucky this once. But now that so messenger RNA vaccines, they were destined for, it was at least 40 years before we are going to get this shit imposed on us, right? They cut 40 years off the development cycle of these fucking abominations. And this technology is nanotechnology. And basically it means that they can come up with a sequence in the morning, they can produce it in the afternoon, literally, with sequencing machines. And so what they're going to do with all these boosters, they effectively an entirely new V, right? An entirely new VX. And so everybody's going to rush out thinking, oh, it's a booster. It's like a variation on. No, it's something they came up with in the morning and they rushed out and manufactured. Basically, the manufacturing cycle is the bottleneck now. So you are literally a fucking guinea pig. So I'm just saying, you take something that's, what they're going to do is they try and do a mimic of some of the sequences. They don't know what those sequences are. If they don't know which one of those compromise your immune system and act like HIV. So they could quite easily roll out something that says, okay, this one works. It reduces people's symptoms. Yeah, it also gives them fucking AIDS. So just be careful, guys. Just I mean, at times like this, go and hide under a fucking rock. Don't argue, don't get political, don't talk to these. Everybody has a fucking weird motive of why you should get the jab, why you should, why it's all right-wing to be anti-V and stuff. It's like, forget all that shit. Just be a fucking intelligent human being and realize this is one of the occasions where the world has gone fucking barking mad. And just do your best to stay at it. Don't argue a point. It's like, why do these people argue this point, saying they're just trying to get back to normalcy. It's all to do with psychology. It's got nothing to do with prudence. So just be prudent. Go hide under a rock if you can. And just until this blows over. It's just, I don't know. Okay, so that's my little rant on that. Does anybody want to say anything?
Well, I mean, does it blow over? I don't know. Can you hear me now or not?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering what happens, whether you're perpetually stuck with some AIDS-like arrangement in the environment. I think.
There's.
Go on.
There are
Sorry.
only two outcomes, right? If you're asking an immunologist, they'll tell you there are only two outcomes for something. So first of all, these things are new, right? There's nothing in our history was like HIV and these things that immunocompromised. These things hijack your immune system. It's diabolical. And I mean, in a biological time, if you just look at how they work, they're just fucking diabolical. They come straight from hell. The only way you can think up a thing like this is if with human intervention. These are artificial. And so, it's saying like, well, that's new. But traditionally, if you get some devastating disease that sweeps through populations, first of all, this only came about after the civilization, right? So hunter-gatherers didn't get pandemics. Animals don't generally get pandemics unless there's some destabilization in their habitat, just like ours. So first of all, this isn't a disease of industrialization. It's saying it's numbers are too dense, we're traveling too much, our lifestyles are unhealthy. That's the message the virus is trying to tell you. No one wants to get that message. They just want to know, how can we get back to the party? And so where these viruses normally go, traditionally, during at least for the last 10,000 years, is they become endemic or they wipe you out. So they don't wipe everybody out. They can't. Eventually, you get back to hunter-gatherer numbers, and then you're safe again. So there's two destinies from this. It's like hunter-gatherer or an endemic. But they're not going anywhere. They are with us for keeps. And that's what the government needs to tell everybody. They need to stop this shit about boosters and all this fucking fairy tales and say, guys, get over it. This is, and it has to basically get endemic or we will die. Those are the only two outcomes. You just learn to fucking live with it. Adjust your lifestyle. And then no one wants to adjust their lifestyle. They're using all these V's and jabs as an excuse to keep their lifestyles. Your lifestyle has gone, right? However you lived before 2020, no one in the history of this planet in the future is going to live like that. Ever fucking again. Especially all the fucking little liberals running around with their sanctimonious fucking politics and wokeness. That life has gone. It's gone 2 years ago. Catch up, for fuck's sake. It's not coming back. Not a single sliver of it. So the government needs to tell people this. And needs to stop waving all these false hopes and lucky rabbit foot and stuff. All it is a narrative for the government to get the economy going again. The government doesn't care about you, doesn't care about your health. It cares about the economy. It cares about GDP growth and productivity. They do not look at the statistics for hospitalization more than 2 seconds. They're looking at a spreadsheet with production figures. They are basing this on production, not on all the shit you look at because you're worried about your health. So there are a couple of epidemiologists that have their heads up their ass, and they say one thing about, all about medicine. The politicians give scant regard to that. All they're doing is looking at GDP growth. It's all. That's the figure they're pursuing. So they will do anything to pursue that. They will say anything. They will lie. They will risk your health. They will do any fucking thing. They will go to war to keep productivity up. Just remember that, okay? Just get some perspective, for fuck's sake. But anyway, sorry, Gary.
Yeah, I just was thinking because I was looking at the situation here, looking at the figures yesterday, and what they seem to be doing is contradictory because we had a lockdown for a very long time, for 3 months, and the case numbers per day for this state got up to over 2,000 at the peak. And then it fell back quite a bit, and then the lockdown ended. And it's taken about 6 weeks or so, and the case numbers have now come up to about the same amount again, up to about 2,200 yesterday it was. A very, very small percentage of that is the new variant. But they seem to be pursuing a policy that, I don't know, I felt it was contradictory, that there's not very many restrictions now, except if you test positive, you're going to be isolated. And I think they're going to run into trouble with that very, very quickly because as the new variant multiplies, which is obviously is going to happen very quickly, if they just keep isolating people on the basis of cases, you're not going to have a workforce within the next couple of months. So they seem to be pursuing a course that's going to lead them to GDP damage. So I can't understand it exactly. Whether there's going to have to be a sudden shift in attitude. So I don't know. I just felt it was contradictory. That's all.
It is contradictory. They're flailing. So they're doing stuff like none of the stuff they do makes any sense. They're just trying to give a semblance of being in control. So they're pursuing tactics that you pursue at the stage where you can still do containment. So they're pretending that we're still at the very early stages where you can actually do contact tracing and containment and stuff. We're way past that. You can forget about that strategy. But then what do they move on to? Well, then we're at the herd immunity stage. That's the next stage. But we've heard very early on, we heard you cannot get herd immunity from this. So where does that leave us? That leaves us at the totally fucked stage. And they just don't want to come out and say, look, guys, we're fucked. So they carry on with all these kabuki dances. I mean, all these things like, the testing and border controls. There's no, they keep on, putting restrictions on flights and borders and stuff. Look, they should stop flights or shut up. You can't just have restrictions and tests and all these, it's just xenophobia for people coming abroad. If you go to Britain, you have to do a 2-day test and an 8-day test and a test before you go and a test. It's like, why? You've got the fucking disease and plenty. It's like trying to stop ice coming to Iceland. It's like, it makes no sense. You might as well put a barrier down Oxford Street and say, if anybody crosses over from the left side of Oxford Street to the right side, they must be tested 3 times and stuff. Why? Everybody on the left of Oxford Street and the right of Oxford Street has the fucking disease. So an airport does nothing. It's you just see how fucking screwed up these people are, and the idea of borders and statehood and xenophobia against Africa and stuff. And they say, like, no, these are all political boundaries that have the virus doesn't give a shit about them. And then on top of that, they're clearly lying about one crucial thing, and that is that I think that it's probably spreading in packaging. So they've absolutely roundly said now, like, oh no, we all established that it doesn't spread in packaging. Horseshit. In the early days, I read a few papers, particularly out of guys from China. They said that basically a frozen package, something like frozen meats and stuff like that, is perfect environment to preserve this disease for over 3 months. So it's like, it's obvious. Amazon is bringing this thing to your door, and they don't want you to know that because it affects the economy. So basically, the reason why they want GDP growth is because they just care about getting elected, and GDP growth is the one thing that helps them get elected. So the next thing is some horror story like, body bags building up outside the emergency. So that's the next thing they care about. So they'll pursue all these madcap kind of strategies because they just don't want to see bad headlines on their watch, because they know they're not going to get elected. If you look at Biden's approval ratings now, they're through the floor. And so that the reason is because he's not being a good daddy and a good shepherd to the flock. And so, they have, that's part of the social contract, is we will protect you from the unprotectable. And so then they have to keep those bad headlines out. But that's all that's going on. Just don't assume that they're doing anything for you or your health. It's like that's the last thing they care about.
No, but isn't there also the parallel agenda of the fact that it's been a very convenient way to increase control, and having got hold of it, they want to maintain that. It's not hard to think that a lot of the restrictions that are here, which aren't doing anything, are there as an authoritarian exercise.
Not quite, because as far as I've seen and the insights that I've got, is they always knew they had this control. They just they always planned to execute it in an emergency. So if you look at all the FEMA plans and the disaster management plans, they all have this arrogant assumption of authority in them. I mean, totalitarian authority, like super scary shit. And so that's always been written into their plans. So they've, as far as I can see in their psychology, they have this idea that they have absolutely supreme power. They give some semblance of democracy and free speech, just in peacetime, just as a little fob. But they know full well that what you see, they've been through wars and stuff. They know what you can do and what you can't do, and it's like they can do fucking anything. People are just sheep. I mean, you're just Jews in Nazi Germany, right? It's like everybody's saying like, but we have to, they can't do that because the Jews would outvote them. It's like, really? The Jews are going to outvote the Nazis? Come on. Your government is totalitarian. So, I mean, everybody, Australia, UK, US, they absolute totalitarian. They just water it down a bit in peacetime. But as soon as we get back to the real shit and the grind, they'll take the blinders off. So they're not training people or anything like that. They can just send a squad with armed guys running down the street and a megaphone and say, get in your house, and people will scurry. So they know that. They're not learning anything out of this. They're just trying to be as light-handed as possible.
I'm just wondering whether they are sort of getting people accustomed to that kind of treatment, or whether they just don't care about that.
No, that's kind of the case I'm making, is they just don't care. What the psychology is very well established. They all through the 50s and MK Ultra and all of these things, and especially during the Korean War, there was a lot of stuff done in psychology and how much you can control people. All the Milgram experiments, all of that were part of this. And they all realized, fucking hell, you can do anything with people. That's the biting thing that comes echoing down from all those studies is, Jesus Christ, we never knew this. You could do anything to anybody, and they don't even bleed. And so they don't need to train people. They don't condition people or something. What they do is shock and awe. So what they established was, if you shock people, then you can do anything afterwards. So if basically it's almost literally like giving people a taser. So if you just do a big spectacular, everybody's babbling and running around crazy, then you can do anything in the wake of that. So, and it's so easy to initiate a crisis. And so they do a shock doctrine. They literally call it a shock doctrine. They do it in finance. They do it, all over. Whatever they want to do. 9/11. It's like all of that stuff. It's a shock doctrine. And so basically, expect the next shock sometime. They will do. It depends what they want to do. And it's clear what they want to do. They want to go to war with China. So it's like, okay, just how do you go to war with China? It's very easy to put yourself in these guys' sandals. They're not very bright. They're about as bright as Pompeo. They very, very predictable, like Pompeo. I mean, just think of Pompeo all the time. Just think, what would Pompeo do? Like you normally think, what would Jesus do? You think, what would Pompeo do? It's very easy. They're very predictable. We're the top dog, and we got to stop this Chinese dog getting, taking over our pitch. So it's like, how do we do this? Well, we got to blow them away before they basically get supremacy over us. Okay, how do we do it? Fill in the blanks. You just shock the population into the necessity to go to war with them. So they're lining those ducks up every single day, and nobody's noticing. People are saying, like, I don't think we're going to war. Why? Oh, my normalcy bias tells me that. My normalcy bias tells me that things are going to get back to normal. Why? Because I believe in wishful thinking and not what my eyes are telling me. And that's a constant.
Is there anything to be said for the argument that, you can use the shock tactic too many times and people become, they just don't respond after a while, or they don't respond as strongly?
Yes, that was experiments they did with dogs, and it's called learned helplessness. So what they found is, if you give people enough shocks, then they just become kind of attenuated, muted responses, utterly obedient. They just crumble. And so a lot of people, a percentage of the population, some small percentage of the population is already getting that way. So you'll get suicides, you'll get people just giving up, just in total defeat. And that's the only problem for the elite is that people don't last long after they get state. So if you go and look in the death camps and stuff, and like Auschwitz, they had a name for people that got into that state, and they all knew that if you get into that state of hopelessness, you only got like a month to go. You're kind of on the home stretch. And so that's they don't want to get masses of people into learned helplessness, but just shocking the sheep now and again, just a cattle prod, right? Like a farmer. You know?
This is what I was thinking, though. I mean, there's a certain amount of this has already gone on with the pseudo pandemic, I guess. But you're going to get we're going to get a lot of these environmental shocks, rather upsetting their plan by introducing more shocks that than are being deliberately manufactured. So, I mean, there's always the chance that the environmental collapse could derail all sorts of plans anyway. But I'm just thinking particularly here of just ongoing assaults on people's sensibility by, you've only got to look at what's happening in the United States at the moment, which seems to be a year-on-year thing now, So, I'm just kind of wondering whether that will upset the normal sequence of events towards war with China or anything else that might be planned.
Yeah, this is what they're planning for. Is that the disasters come thick and fast, and their only narrative is control. So it's like, how do you keep control when everything's disintegrating around you? And the standard way is they just get more authoritarian. So I mean, what happens is everybody goes into an escape mode, and they try and get escape. So some people escape into drugs and alcohol, some people escape into religion and cults, and stuff like the flippening is ready made for people to get escape. And some people escape into hedonism, anything that gives them pain relief. And so, yeah, it's a mass psychosis. So it's a mass psychosis that you don't want to take part in, because there's there's a transformation, but I think this transformation out of this one is pyrrhic. I think it's like you want to go through your own psychological transformation. You want to go through eupsychosis. What they're going through is malpsychosis followed by extinction. So you want to go through eupsychosis followed by survival. And so that's what I'm trying to tell people about. See, even if I'm absolutely completely wrong about the flippening, it doesn't really matter. It is the way you should be thinking. If the flippening wasn't true, it would be good to invent it, because it's the standard fare of any apocalyptic kind of salvationism. It's the bread and butter of early Christianity, early Mithraism, early everything. So the problem is that it's pure People's Temple stuff. You see, it's well worth looking at the People's Temple and where they got to, and you don't want to go down that path. But the problem is, you can't really avoid it. You have to go down that path and know how to survive it. So in other words, you can't avoid this test. You have to, thread the needle and survive it. So one of the greatest problems, I think, is people thinking they can avoid it. Right? So everybody says to me, they're all on about all the DMs I get and stuff is how can I avoid it? And it's tough, because the very part of your brain, the alien cortex, that's saying how can I survive, you have to say, like, you cannot. Okay, wherever we're going, the alien cortex, it doesn't get there. So this is kind of what we're saying to Sophie in the last Sunday. I don't think that point got across. So, well, how do you know the alien cortex doesn't? How do you know people don't recreate this civilization? It's like, it's impossible. The alien cortex can't get through this filter. This is the great filter. And so I mean, just think about it. Just to ground it in some reality is, imagine Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos is a guy with lots of resources who, from the cradle, has probably from about the age of 4, I'd expect he got the idea that the world is hostile and you have to be an arsehole to make it. He's a bit of a runt of the litter, so he's going to have to use his noggin to, beat out all the hostile forces in the world. Huge in .com, and then now he's got the resources to survive. Now he's Mr. chess-playing alien cortex, right? This man is not going to survive. Why? Because think what he's going to do. He's going to be kind of a psychopathic version of Pompeo. So he probably knows about the flippening, and he's probably going to try and do it by hanging out in space, and he'll probably survive. And what'll happen when he comes down to Earth? He'll be fucking slaughtered. Have you ever read The Admirable Crichton?
I've heard about it. It's Ian Foster, isn't it?
Yeah. So
yeah, you did mention it a long time ago.
Don't know.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, for people that don't know, it's one of these stories a bit like Lord of the Flies, and it's one of these things a bit like we were saying about How Like a King I Dined in the Robinson Crusoe. It's Swiss Family Robinson. There was an era where these people thought, can you bug out of civilization and get back to paradise? Everything from Gauguin, all of these guys, a long history during the Industrial Revolution. So the Admirable Crichton was one of these. It was for aristocrats in England, and it was kind of the H.G. Wells's Time Machine was the exact thing, and Morlocks and Eloy. And so this book was written for the Eloy, written for the XR, the young XR guys, all the precious little dandies and effete little dilettantes in XR that, like their Christmas message thing just makes you want to puke. So it's basically for those puke-worthy types that thought they were superior because, they put them on, the social system put them at the top. And then they all wondered in their dark, Mary Shelleyan nightmare is, what would happen if I was really put to the test? If all the people that served me dinner, if I had to compete with them, or, we all wound up where we didn't have the army and the soldiery to protect us in our, Downton Abbey. And so the book there was the normal fare where rich fuck and butler and entourage get shipwrecked, wind up on an island. And then, of course, the Lord of the Manor, Mr. Haw-Haw, he doesn't shape, because what does he do? He can't even tie his own shoelaces. I had one of these ancestors. About one of my, we've got family stories of my great grandfather. And my father told me that he got in stress. He became a distressed gentleman, lost all his estates, and for a while he had to come and live with my dad and his family when my dad was a kid. And he came to them and he said, like, I need a new toothbrush, and Oliver's toothbrush. And they said, why? It doesn't look that bad. And he said, no, it doesn't foam anymore. And after a bit of questioning, they realized, for the first time in his entire life since he was out of diapers, and he didn't know that every time his Batman handed him his toothbrush, he actually dipped it in the tooth powder first and then handed it. He thought that there was some magic in the toothbrush that made it foam. And so you took away his Batman, he couldn't even brush his fucking teeth. Now, this is what the Admirable Crichton is about. Is Crichton is that butler who now they all rely on, because the butler can do shit. He's like MacGyver. And the Lord can't even tie his own fucking shoelaces. Literally. I think there are many English gentlemen that couldn't tie an Oxford tie or tie their fucking shoelaces because it was done for them by a batman. And so, this is the horror of the e-lawyers. Like, is it possible that we're not all that well-bred, or we're actually inbred, and we're actually incapable, and all these other, Morlocks that serve us are actually the ones that will survive if things go a bit monkey? And so that was the horror, terror. And that was so then, spoiler alert, the Admirable Crichton becomes the big chief. The butler becomes the big chief because he can do shit while they're on the island. Eventually, when they get rescued, then it immediately reverts back to type. And then the Lord goes like, oh, well, put my things on the ship now, Crichton. And so Crichton goes from becoming the big king to being a butler again. And so anyway, the whole point of this this story is that it is a test of whether you can be Crichton, because Crichton survives, right? Was that, or where did we start off on that little tangent? That was. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I'm just looking because we were talking about this shock fatigue effect, youth psychosis, the great filter of the alien cortex. I don't know. You must have taken a bit of a leap.
Yeah. Oh, no. It was about why the alien cortex cannot survive. Okay, so then, so Jeff Bezos is Lord Haw, or whatever the guy's name is, in the Admirable Crichton. So if Jeff Bezos comes down, off his spaceship and say like, okay, now we have to survive the nuclear winter, he's going to get an axe in the head, because Crichton and these guys just don't need him. I mean, he's utterly superfluous, and he's an arrogant twat. You see, Amazon and Amazon Web Services and stuff, they're in Seattle, and I know a lot of guys actually work there. And so these guys have this, it's a cult. It's Jeff Bezos's cult. And if you talk to them, they all work to death. They actually have a mantra of, we must be more robot, we must be more machine, we must be literally, they think that this is some kind of virtue, being a machine. Why? Because their cult leader told them that. Because he wants machines. He doesn't want people unpredictable. He doesn't want equals. He doesn't want rivals. He wants people to do his bidding. And so it's like, imagine that in an environment where people can just walk up behind you and just put an axe in your head and there's zero consequence. How long do those guys survive? It's basically, I've seen it with my own eyes. When you get into trouble, and those guys last seconds. So the only thing that's propping up our entire system, all these rich fucks that everybody lords and stuff like that, they are hanging on a thread. The only thread that keeps them hanging on is the police. It's the police and the courts. That's it. If the police and the courts disappear, those guys are dogs meat. I mean, I would happily feed them to one of my dogs.
So
it's like,
the thin blue line.
It's like, yeah.
The thin blue line.
And it is so thin. I mean, you see, everybody thinks these guys are invulnerable because they think our society is invulnerable. But look at Musk. I mean, I really feel sorry for Musk, because he's I think him and Zuck, I mean, they're moments away from a stock market crash where they back to rags. And nobody sees it. It's like the richest man that's ever been. It's also absolutely paper thin. It's basically a Ponzi scheme that will unravel in days. And everybody will be shocked and amazed and stuff, because they think, how can that happen? I thought if I made it to be king of the castle, I was enshrined on the right hand of God for all eternity. No, you're there for about 3 minutes and then fucking fall. So it's really, easy come, easy go. And these guys had a very easy come fortunes. So it's like everybody thinks that they're durable, and they're not. They're absolutely built on sand. So, it's another way of saying the alien cortex cannot get through this adversity. It cannot. And you can just go back, ask an anthropologist. Ask an anthropologist. If you're strategic, if you're gaming, if you're not very trustworthy, if you're a liar, and you go and live in an indigenous population, they will axe you. I mean, literally, in days.
Yeah, that came out in that short story that posted about a fair while ago called "And Then There Were None," uh, about a kind of anarchist society, and uh, part of that story was what happened to people who just gamed the system. You know, how they would just be excluded uh, until they couldn't survive. It was an interesting portrayal.
Wasn't that an Agatha Christie one? Wasn't that the
No,
Agatha Christie one where they're all on the island?
no, this was a science fiction one. I'll think of the guy's name in a minute. The name of the story is "And Then There Were None." It's a 1950s science fiction short story. Um, and it was quite interesting portrayal of an anarchist society, and also possibly the way a tribal society would work. But it was given a science fiction setting. What I wanted to ask you was just where you were talking about the flippening having this quality of not giving the alien cortex an escape route. Um, but if we pursue the path we're on at the moment, where authoritarianism keeps getting ramped up to the point where it reaches a screaming fever pitch, um, that have the same effects? Because once people realize that this is just totally dominant, it's all powerful and they have no escape, that the actual increase in authoritarianism could, uh, would you see that under any circumstances leading to eucycosis?
Yes, it did in South Africa. So, that was the story of South Africa, and eventually got to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, where everybody discovered their humanity and the alien cortex was vanquished. But the problem is, it didn't, like all these things, it's not permanent, because it doesn't matter if it's like you can't have one sane person in the corner of the lunatic asylum. So South Africa got sane, and then it's like all that means is, okay, now your job expands. Now you've got to expand to the rest of the world. So South Africans went out and tried to spread the sanity, but you know you, it's easy to get, well, it's fucking difficult, in fact, to get sane in one corner of the asylum. But immediately, if you achieve that miracle, then your task is 10 times bigger, and you have to get the next 10 inmates and get them sane. But you see, you can't just have one sane country or one sane person and stuff. But by definition, a sane person in an insane society is insane, and in our society, they'll basically, the power brokers, people like psychiatrists and heads of family and stuff, they will use their power to stop anybody behaving like a shaman and transforming them. So the vast majority of people, schizophrenics and things like that wind up in clinics, they wind up there because schizophrenics don't go to doctors. They wind up there because power figures, people in heads of colleges or heads of families or something, people that have a vested interest in maintaining the power structure, they bring them to clinicians. And what they're doing is they're saying, like, this one is a problem one. Please fucking use your superior authority to get them under control. And so they transfer their insanity onto effectively the schizophrenic's scapegoat, and the psychiatrist's authority that society gives them. They then use them to control and box up the schizophrenic, and what they're doing is so that they don't have to change. They use the schizophrenic as a sacrifice so that they don't change. In the old days, they valued the schizophrenic, call him a shaman, and then they would respond to the shaman and change. But we got to the stage where the alien cortex reached this supreme, hegemony, and now it just pathologizes anybody that's anti-alien cortex to the point where we can just say, well, that's not rational, and that means that you ought to be put on the on the altar and sacrificed like a goat. Why? Because you're not rational. Because like
Did
rationality is a
you?
disease. Look what rationality is doing to us. It's making us go extinct.
I seem to remember some time back you uh, mentioned like what proportion of people would have to be genuinely sane to prevent the kind of alien cortex from coming back, from dominating again. Like I don't know what we used to, like 80% of a group would need to be not dominated by the alien cortex in order to stop it from coming back to a dominating position in the society. You got anything to say there?
Well, it's different. You see, it's a scale-free network, right? So it's a mesh network, and you have these preferential nodes. So it's very important about which node. So 80% is you see, the 80% you can get to it quite easily. It's not that, oh, you have a huge task, you have to go one by one, and thinking linearly, you must make 8% of people sane. It's not quite like that at all. The net result is that, but you can get there a number of ways. One of them is you can take a preferential node. The preferential node, then if some great influencer in the world got sane, they could propagate sanity to 80% virtually instantly. The other way is the environment. The reason why we have the alien cortex and why it survives is most people are not, driven by the alien cortex. Only about 1 in 20, they're semi-psychopathic, right? So the wealth create guys that, basically the Jeff Bezoses and stuff. But that, most people are sane. They will sit around in the sun, fucking and drinking beer and generally behaving like hunter-gatherers, which is how we're supposed to be. About 1 in 20 people gets everybody, running to raid the other guys or raid the other tribe or doing some fucking Tower of Babel or getting to the moon. It's some kind of Kennedy one, right? So those are the sick people, and they thrive because we got into this feedback loop where the alien cortex created civilization as a niche where it survived best. So it survives because of the habitat it created, the niche habitat it created. Now, if you take civilization away, people instantly will revert back to type, which is not alien cortex. And so you can get that 80% back again just by removing society. So again, that's why they won't recreate IDA, because the resources are gone, the oil is gone, and all of the fossil fuels that make the society. But why? They're half used up, and the other half that you couldn't get to if you had a standing start as a hunter-gatherer. They're inaccessible, which is good. So this era is well and truly over. As any way you look at it, no one's going to invent cold fusion or any fusion. Nuclear stuff the Earth is going to flip long before people roll out nuclear programs, even though India's starting one now. But basically, there's no way the alien cortex can maintain its niche. So its niche is very exotic and fragile. So civilization is exotic, fragile, and going away soon. It was based on oil. So people don't really understand that. They think linearly because alien cortex, and so they're thinking of this fantastic future and this futurology and Ray Kurzweil and the singularity and stuff. And it's like that is guaranteed. There are very few things you can guarantee in life, but that's one of them, that will not happen. And so just do the fucking math. But the end result is, what I'm saying is, you don't have to laboriously go and make 80% of people rational. People are behaving irrationally because that's expected by the culture and the habitat. But I mean, you can take somebody out of the city, stick them on a mountaintop and breathe some fresh air and hike around and get their own food. They can go from a drug addict, pimp or whatever, to being a normal hunter gatherer in a day, because you just take them out of that environment. So, but you see, we're reinforcing that environment by, if somebody is a pimp or drug dealer or something like that, then we double down. We put them in prison, and inside that cage, that's a university for the alien cortex, and it comes out that much more pathological once it's been through the University of San Quentin. And so we're making the environment. The alien cortex is manufacturing its own best environment. But just like a bacteria in a vat, it's also poisoning itself. So the very thing that makes the alien cortex is slowly polluting and poisoning its environment, so it becomes untenable. So either way, you can't get that. But does that answer the question?
Yeah, thanks. No, that's good. I just wanted to go back at some point there. It seemed worthwhile to, because you were talking about GDP and that kind of thing. I was just thinking about recent news of China and Russia trying to dump the petrodollar, and also Turkey now, Turkey's currency becoming, essentially worthless. I think you posted some things about that. Is there anything you've got in mind there that's worth talking about?
This is crucially dangerous stage. You see, for the last maybe 2 decades, but particularly the last decade, everybody has been in this quiet trade war and currency war. Now, it's gone largely unnoticed, except if you're a central banker or politician or something. What they're all trying to do is trying to devalue their currency to make themselves competitive. So it's really a game that China started because China did a peg against the dollar. It's against the WTO. It's against the trade rules, and it's very easy to mechanize your country and raise the standard of living. All you do is you devalue your currency. If you devalue your currency, it means you can export, and it means that your population can't import. So, if you're in China, it means you have to work like a dog. You have to, everything you produce has to be sent overseas. China then gets a currency influx, a balance of payments deficit with whoever they're shipping their crap to. And if you're Chinese, you can't afford Louis Vuitton and Yves Saint Laurent and stuff like that. You can't afford luxury goods or any goods that are manufactured in the outside. And so that's an easy trick, and that's what China pulled. It's basically what goes back to Deng Xiaoping and these guys. So they said, like, okay, we are going to make 1.4 billion people into America, and then we're going to go back to communism. So we're first going to, they saw the Soviet Union collapse, right? So they realized, okay, we can't do communism because the economy falls apart. So it's like, okay, so what we're going to do is luxury communism. We're going to give all our workers a huge standard of living and then do communism. New plan. So then they say, like, okay, now we have Deng Xiaoping, and then it's like, okay, how do we do this? There's the easiest way since Ricardo and the other fraud, damn it, I can't remember. His name is the Invisible Hand and all that shit. So anyway, ever since then, the mercantilists will tell you that all you have to do is devalue your country. So they did it. They did a peg against the dollar, and immediately, they have a massive balance of trade deficit or surplus, if you look at it from the Chinese point of view. What they did with that surplus is just buy treasuries in the States, and so America didn't mind because they kept the American Ponzi scheme going. But both sides know that where this is going to end up, and it ends up in war. But neither side minds, because the Chinese are thinking, well, look, we're going to accumulate all the chips on our table, and then we're going to be rich, we're going to be powerful, and then we're going to do this before they manage to shoot us through the head. And the Americans on the other side of the table are watching all their chips flying over the table to the Chinese, and they're going like, we don't care. We've got a fucking 6-shooter right there on the fucking table. And as soon as this little yellow cunt gets all the chips, we shoot him through the head and take all the chips back. And so that's, they're playing this game of poker with very serious high consequences. So this is what's been going on for the last 2 decades. And then there's a very easy trick now. So what the whole world has been doing is this currency war, this very quiet currency war. Everybody's been trying to devalue their currency so they can keep up with China. They're all trying to do this race to the bottom. Well, since it's all relative, if everybody devalues their currency, everything stays the same. And so all it does is pressure workers and their wages. So everybody's devaluing and saying like, where does this stop? Well, there's a very easy trick, and that is you can just go full-on Zimbabwe dollar. So if you like Erdogan or something, you can just make your currency worthless and start with the new one. And so then you've got ahead of everybody. So if somebody pulls that game, more and more people will have to do it. And so that's clearly what Schwab and all of these guys have seen this coming, and that's what the financial Great Reset is like. We cannot devalue and inflate our currencies anymore. We just start with a new one, and then we have a new game. And that's why people say, oh, we're going to go for crypto. We're not going to go for crypto. They'll just start a new currency that's basically centralized with them. So they will have something like the Bancor or they'll probably have 2 currencies. One of them is the SDR, like special drawing rights that governments will use, and then we'll get a crap currency that's entirely digital. They'll de-dollarize, and then whatever the new dollar is will it'll come with lots of strings attached. So to get your hands on that new dollar, you will have to have micro control. So you've got a lot of leeway about how you earn dollars. You can do criminal activity and stuff and earn dollars. Once it's digital, and they've completely digitized all the currencies, then there's no escape. You can't do anything illegal because they'll be able to track you and just cut you off, right? You won't be able to spend $1 as a hooker, right? So you won't be able to get a hooker with a digital currency, because basically they will see that transaction, and then basically they will prosecute you. You will be on a reform program. You'll be in Allison's world where they have impact tokens. They will monetize you as a rogue agent and change your behavior. So they'll do behavior modification for cash, all very lucrative, and so it's utterly totalitarian. So that's where we've headed. That's where we're headed. In the meantime, the wrinkles. One of the wrinkles is they have to separate all the chipsets, right? They have to so that there've been too many people putting Trojan horses in other people's electronics. Basically, the Chinese into telcos and drones and stuff like that, and Intel and all the other criminals into phones and CPUs and stuff, and GPUs and stuff. So once they get all the chipsets separated and they're both confident they have a reasonably clean chipset, then they can go to war. So we must be a couple of years away. But you see, they have to go to war. America has to go to war. There's this closing window where it'll be too late. China will be able to take too much of a toll. It'll be more of a, they have a line that's essentially mutually assured destruction. So they're not there yet. America has supremacy and can destroy China. China can't destroy America, but is trying to get there. So a coalition between Iran, Russia, and China doesn't get them to that line of mutually assured destruction. But they're approaching it, and America has to shoot them through the head before they get there. And so that's what's happening. And so the de-dollarization is and demonetization is one of the steps on the way there. But this, by the way, in case you think this is all bad news and stuff, it's the best news you've ever heard in your life. The day World War III breaks out, you should celebrate. It is very, very beneficial for everybody. It'll be a bit of a meat grind. See, basically, as what kind of war it would be. So, okay, we're putting all of this under the heading of the stages that you need to do to survive the flippening. The first one is you need to survive the collapse of the global industrial system, which comes first, probably. Although the flip could happen anytime, what's liable to happen is, if you're going to make it through this challenge, this is the first hurdle, is making it through all the madness, and the pandemic's just the tip of the iceberg. The shit's coming now is much more challenging. And again, you cannot opt out. You cannot go to the mountains. You can't put your head in the sand. It's just not a viable strategy. You've got to be right in it, and you have to survive. You have to sit this test out and ride it, and you have to pass it and ace it. And so it's like you don't get to shirk this one. So anyway, what the war is liable to be like is well, I'm afraid America is going to lose it, because America has set themselves up where they have to win a war very quickly. They have to, literally days, right? They have to do essentially Iraq again. We're talking about masses of EMPs and stuff like that, but they have to win the war, particularly the cyber war, with, if it runs into 3 weeks, they're done. They've utterly lost, right? So they have to do a blitzkrieg. The Chinese, on the other hand, have a huge expendable army, and they have to make it into a meat grinder war. So they have to drag the thing out and turn it into a muddy trench war. So that's what the two are trying to do. And so, basically, if the war draws out too much, China's won. But imagine the landscape where it gets to victory. It's basically years and years of grind. But I would expect it to start in proxy wars. The proxy wars with Iran is coming, the Ukraine, Taiwan and stuff. But all of this is very good news. You see, what people will not notice is all the bullshit that's really dangerous, like them building nuclear power stations and doing big infrastructure builds, and all of that stuff is becoming untenable while a war goes on. So a war is great news. You want to stay out of the army. You definitely don't want to wind up in a draft. But all of them have too many people, and too many young people. So as soon as the young start getting a little bolshy, which is already happening, there's a lot of pressure on politicians to start a draft, because you can just clean up the streets instantly with a draft. So you start off with a draconian thing like the police crimes bill, and when people eventually start saying fuck the police crimes bill, then you just start a draft. You just draft them and take them overseas. And so it's in all the totalitarian and government interests to start this war and keep control by cleaning up the streets. So how to navigate all of that we must go over, but you'll see how to do it. The very first thing that happens is you need to protect some kind of wealth, because you need to get through this financial great reset. And I keep on hinting, it's bullion, gold bullion, silver bullion, but with understanding that they will confiscate it as soon as they realize people are hoarding it. So you got to be nimble as fuck. But the very first thing is to try and diversify your assets out of things that you don't have to talk to an intermediary to get to them. So if you have to, however many intermediaries are between you and your cash, is a measure of how improbable it is that you get to that cash in a crisis, and a crisis is coming.
Yeah, I was thinking about the intermediary thing, and people who probably are buying gold or silver, but are they actually, when the time comes, are they actually going to be able to do anything with it before it becomes too late to do anything with it?
It's my belief that the gold and silver is deep in our collective memory as valuable. If you get a hold of a gold coin like a maple, or don't get an eagle. There are too many. Eagles there are too many counterfeits. But if you get a Krugerrand or a maple, something with 0.999%, then if you just hold it in your hands and flip it around, you'll see that you can feel it's valuable. You see, we've lost touch because we got everything flim-flam and virtual reality now, and we have digital currency, so it's like people have lost touch with currency. But when they have to really earn it, when they're really hungry and they need real money to get some bread, then they will rediscover the idea of money as valuable and not just digits or points in a game. And when they do that, when you really start to value money again, there's no question that the visceral feel of holding gold and silver in your hand, you can feel it as worthy and money, and you know why that people used to venerate it.
This goes back to what you were. It's reminding me of what you said about the Admirable Crichton and sort of uselessness. I don't know where it was. Some little thing somebody had bought for the first time, and they were shocked because of the weight, just what you're saying, the tactility, and they had obviously never experienced anything like this before, and it was very much the same thing about being out of touch with doing things for yourself and having a feel for not just for doing things for yourself, but also I think the error that we make in society, like people driving around in their cars, and they don't understand what's going on inside that engine, and the immense forces and the huge amount of energy that's exchanging there is just beyond there. They have no they've got no feel for it, no sense of it. It's just an abstraction. And I just thinking about that because really that attitude, what you were just saying about holding a silver coin or a gold coin, for people who have not done that, who don't realize, who you look at a periodic table and if you've never picked up a gold coin before, but you familiar with a periodic table, you ought to be able to expect what your experience is going to be like, but people they don't even have that kind of knowledge generally. It's just
yeah, you see, this is why I recommend boats. I can't recommend boats enough, because we need to get back to what's real, and a boat puts you in touch with what's real quickly. So we're completely immersed in the unreal, in the virtual, in the digital, and it's absolute crap. Everybody's job is just tapping away at a keyboard. It's not even a paper shuffle. It's not even as real as paper. It's even even paperless now. It's like not even paper covers it. So So it's utterly ephemeral. It's just flip flops and bits in a machine. It's like you can't get any more virtual than that. It's literally the most basic representation of information. So it's, in other words, as abstract as you can possibly get. And everything's abstract now. Everything's been abstracted into insignificance. But you see, and everything allows you to. You turn on a tap and the water comes out. It's actually real water, but it's utterly abstract to people. If on a boat, you have to actually plan that, make that water. So when I switch on the tap and some water comes out, that only happens because I planned it to get the solar, and the solar got me enough power to run my water maker. I had to be in a place where the water was fresh enough to make the water. And so then basically, when the water comes out, I've earned that fucking water. It took a lot of planning to get to, and basically that's where it's real. When the water comes out, it's like real. And it's the same with the gas. All the resources I use, they're real because I have to think about them. I have to plan them. Now, it's very obvious when people have visitors on the boat, is they utterly oblivious to what's real. They'll fill up a kettle, a huge kettle like this. They'll use half a fucking thing of gas to heat it up, and they'll make half a cup of tea. And I was like, seriously, you know how much energy it takes to warm up like 5 liters of water? It's like, and then they have like a little cup like this, and it's like they kind of like crazy people. They and then they'll put the hot water in a little glass with a lemon, and say like, that lemon in hot water actually eats plastic. They don't know. They're not in touch with the physical world, so they fuck up everything. They use masses of resources. Nothing works, and they're miserable. They say this is hell on a boat, because you have to think all the time what you're doing. You have to be aware of real shit, and you say, yeah, this is the world that is coming. So don't think in terms of more abstract things. People think, well, if I'm going to survive the flipping, I have to get all these skills and stuff. Yeah, you do, but again, you're still thinking like a caged chimp. You're still thinking too abstract. Start basically. So get familiar with real shit. Get familiar with real shit. So taking courses and stuff is just more virtual, unreal shit, right? So saying like, first, when you understand what's real, then you'll understand what you need. Because there's an industry of people that are taking these young kids that know that collapse is coming, and they teaching them survival skills that are not. So that you can go to Nicaragua or Ecuador, any fucking all these places in the jungle. You can spend big monies, like a few grand. You'll fly out there and they'll tell you how to do an eco village and how to do survival and to get in touch with your fucking aura or some shit. And then basically have ayahuasca, and it's like all of this is unreal shit. So it's basically, if you go into the eco village, you'll find out they have solar panels and wind farms and all the shit that you absolutely will not need, because there's no use that a hunter-gatherer has for a computer, for a wind turbine, for a water turbine, for anything. It's absolutely useless fucking shit. And it's basically, but that people don't know because they're completely out of touch with what's real. You're better off, rather than spending $2,000, just go live with some homeless people. It's a free education, and it'll be far, far better than going off into the jungles in Ecuador to be ripped off by some guys that are taking money from privileged rich kids that are prepping. So yeah, so black people, people that are at the bottom of the social hierarchy and stuff like that, they know, they have an expression: keep it real, dude. It's like, go find out what real is, and then the rest comes easy, man.
It's kind of like cargo cult too. People will say, "Oh, well, I get the cargo cult," but on the other hand, they're living it as well. They say, "Oh, it's all right. I know all this stuff comes from a factory, but you still just go and pull it off a shelf, and or it's delivered. You don't even have to lift your finger. You don't need to think about how it came into existence, what needed to be done. It just arrives for you.
Well, this is very dangerous because people have a sense of certainty that is unwarranted. So the pandemic's done a great job of, pulling people out of their complacency. They realize actually, the shops do actually go bare occasionally. The shelves do actually empty. But you see, they're not visually in tune. It's just like, oh, somebody, the zookeeper stopped feeding us. Oh, shock, horror. And so, but you see, they're not gauging which bits are resilient and which bits are not. So the simple rule of thumb is how long is the chain? So it's how long is the chain to get to you. So if you're eating processed food, you eventually get to the stage where if you get familiar with the reel, where you can pick up a piece of food or something and you can say, okay, this has at least 100 people involved in bringing it into my hand. And then, you can go into a garden, look at a fruit tree, and you can pick something and say, okay, there's 0 people between me and this this fruit. And you start to see things in a different way. And basically the way is real because it's how permanent they are. So, picking a fruit or vegetable out of your garden or out of somebody else's garden is probably far more resilient than having shit sent to you from China by 50 different stages and 50 different intermediaries before it gets into your hand. So you can look at this apple, which is polished and nicely grown and stuff, and has a little label that says as a Chiquito banana or something. You say like, okay, how many fucks actually touched this thing to get into my hand? Well, probably 80% of them had COVID. But anyway, so that's this thing, and then this thing which looks a little gnarly, and the birds have eaten it, but it comes from the market from this guy who sells it out of the back of his truck here in Greece and grows it in his backyard. So it's like, this has one person between you and your nutrition, and this has about 100, and how many of them have COVID? A lot. That's the way you start looking at the world, and that's better than any education you'll get in
If I
an
can
eco-village in Ecuador.
maybe change the subject, that recent little group of people you found, the Kosa Society in Slovenia. What was behind that? Did you know something about them, or did they just pop up out of the blue? It sounded as though you must have had some background information, or I got that impression.
No, it's a guy who's been kind of lurking right since I started making videos, and so we've exchanged lots of emails and ideas and stuff, and it's a very I've never been to Slovenia, but it's a very from him I gather it's a very strange very strange place and amazingly restrictive. So what you can do there and what you're capable of doing in terms of activism and stuff like that is very restricted. And so we've been exchanging thoughts and stuff, and he's been working on a project with other people, and they're just getting launched. But
Yeah, I could
he's
just had the impression that there was a background there that you hadn't said anything about, So
it's a very unique environment and challenging in that country. So I think what I'm trying to say is I don't think the stuff they come up with will travel. I don't think you can replicate it very easily. But I don't know. Maybe there are other countries that are similar, but it's sort of a very idiosyncratic place by the sounds of things. So it's like It's unique. I mean, it's utterly intriguing to me because it is it is a big salad bowl, and he tells me all sorts of interesting things that I find really fascinating, and one of them is that all these people have all the stuff available to them. They can actually easily grow their stuff. A lot of people have property and can actually, start growing shit. They can collect wood and stuff. They're very well situated for prepping, but they they didn't they even the old folks, they kind of went for gas, natural gas and stuff for cooking, because even though it was more expensive, they didn't like doing all the hard craft of collecting firewood and stuff like that. So they gradually drifted towards the the modern world, just out of kind of, well, you almost say laziness, but it's kind of short-sightedness. They actually had to work harder for the money to buy the gas than they did going and collecting it. So it's kind of, I think it gives you all sorts of insights into what we've done in our own society, as or the kind of American Anglophile society.
I think
When I was, so I'll
uh,
keep quoting. You're gonna.
Go ahead,
oh,
DB.
okay. Yeah, I was just
What?
gonna say that it dupes you with convenience, but it's shortchanging you in the long term.
It's kind of like, look at you got to read the book like The Original Affluent Society, which is about hunter gatherers. And I was told this myth when I was at school that, it was all nasty, brutish, and short, and all this fucking Hobbesian myth about hunter gatherers. And then when we actually went and saw, San people and all of these people, they say, like, these people just fuck around all day. But they would they would tell us, it's basically, it's this authoritarian doublespeak. So they would tell us at school that, like, this place would be nothing before white people got here. They didn't even have the wheel. There was, this place was a wreck, and white people built this country without white people organizing everything and providing science. And the way it's like, Africans are just lazy fucks that would lie around all day, and that's what they do. Look at them. They just lie around all fucking day when they could have been inventing the wheel. They would have got nowhere if it wasn't for us. And then, by the same token, then they say, that hunter-gatherer lifestyle is nasty, brutish, and short, and you have to work your ass off all the time, and you're ravaged by disease, and it's fucking awful. And you say, but you were just, these guys are hunter-gatherers that you're just telling us sit around having fun all day instead of doing the graft to build a country. And you say, which is it? Well, obviously, it's a fucking lie. You see, what everybody's done is they have the false promise of luxury. So now all these people, they also told me at school, was like, the biggest problem, this was from Keynes, was the biggest problem that people are going to have when you grow up is what to do with all their free time, because you're only going to be working a couple of days a week because of all the automation and stuff. And so, there'll be masses of leisure, and it's going to be a big problem because not everybody can deal with lots of leisure. And that's what they told us. And of course, when you grow up, you find out, well, fucking hell, now I work twice as hard as my dad ever worked. And so they're like, what the fuck happened? Well, everybody thinks that, we're going to live this life of luxury. And they put so much work into it. They put 10 times much work into this luxury that, they'd be better off without it. They wouldn't be working so hard if they didn't have it.
Yeah, the example, because I was involved with some bicycle people, several times over, the calculation has been done regarding the use of a car to travel. And, and basically in every instance, if you calculate the amount of time that the person has to work for to pay for the car in all of its cost, and add that time to the time of their car trip, it's faster to ride a bicycle wherever you want to go.
Yep, that's
Yeah,
me.
that's exactly right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm doing that. Yeah.
yeah, it's a beautiful
But,
thing to
but
keep in mind.
this is an important point, because this taps on socialism, right? So you see, one of the things people don't think of is they don't follow the whole loop, right? So this is one of the costs of socialism. So people think healthcare system and everything is wonderful. What kind of a luddite are you that you don't like the healthcare system? And you hypocrite. If you got sick, you'd be the first one to go to hospital and plead for them to treat you and stuff like that. And say yes, yes, yes. But how many days of the year do you actually work to pay for the tax that will go into socialized medicine? And I'm telling you, you're working a couple of months. So by the time you worked a couple of months out of the year to pay for the medicine, it's like, why do you need all that medicine? Because of the stress of that extra couple of months. So nobody actually asks. They just take it for read as, I'm scared of disease. And so anybody that can help me with my disease phobia and my fear of medicine and promise me healthcare, I'll vote for them, and I'll do any crazy shit just to make sure they're hospitals. And you say, well, hang on a minute. No, aren't you prepared to do even basic arithmetic? No, it's like hospitals good, everything else bad, monkey bad, wild bad, hospitals good. And you say like, hang on. There's nothing that is black and white. So saying like, the reason why do you need these hospitals? Well, because of all these diseases. Look at the statistics: heart attack, diabetes, all of COVID, all of these things. Like, why do you have them? Because of the industrial system. Why do you have the industrial system? Because that's what it means to actually have hospitals. We're doing the industrial system so we can have hospitals, and the hospitals are there because the industrial system is taking its toll on us. So nobody completes the circle. So
Yeah,
if we got rid of industrialism, we wouldn't need the fucking hospitals. But it's like no one can get there and make that leap. So they're
yeah,
killing themselves to basically fight for these luxuries. They're chasing a mirage.
yeah, and it's also healthier. Like I got asked one time, like, I was at a phone store like 6 or 5 years ago, however long I've been riding my bike. And he asked me, he's like, why are you riding your bike? Because he thought I was like virtue signaling and being an environmentalist. And I was like, no, I fucking hate cars. And it's like, it also comes with its own rewards because you get healthier. Like, my calf muscles are as hard as rocks because I walk and ride a bike everywhere. It literally gets you in shape. It's good for you. Yeah.
Yeah, well, so hunter gatherers didn't have dentists. Why? Because they didn't need them. You see, here's the thing that you needs to be, socialists need to be drilled on. Say like, if you want to be a socialist, why? Mainly because of socialized medicine. I kind of said this in the very first video that I made in episode 1. And basically, if economists do this survey where they say like, you ask people today, would you prefer to be alive today and have a income of about 70,000 K, or basically middle class, or would you prefer to live in 1900 and be a millionaire? Because 70,000, if it was translated in real terms just to 1900, it would be a millionaire's salary. Well, over 90% of people in the developed world say that they would rather live today with 70,000 K than live in 1900 with a million. And you say like, I'm appalled, because you see, I lived in the kind of back century when South Africa was behind the times, and there was much. So I know very, very, very viscerally what an Edwardian existence is like. I'm saying like a millionaire in the Edwardian thing. You are living like Queen Elizabeth today. You seriously, you would make that trade? And if you look into it, so why middle class sucks. What the fuck can you do as a middle class person today? Fuck all. So I'm appalled at that. But if you look into it, the reason is medical care. See, what everybody's scared of is that in 1900 you could basically get a prick on your finger and you would get tetanus and die. Now you just have antibiotics. And so they all scared of that they wouldn't have medical care. But here's the problem: is that you're not only, if you go further back than that, back to the hunter-gatherer, you don't need the medical care. Hunter-gatherers never got cancer. They never had any dental problems. So you need to tell that to socialists. It's like, it's like all this system of socialized care that you want is, you don't need it unless you have an industrial system. And it's like, the industrial system isn't worth it. It basically, it's like, why not get rid of the industrial system and get rid of socialized medicine, and then you'd be healthy and you would have all your leisure time. But no one can get there. They're stuck on this idea that all these goodies are worth it. But you can easily prove to somebody that their goodies are not worth it. If I maintain that if you just got anybody and said, you run out tomorrow and buy the next model of iPhone, it's like everybody runs out to do it. They all get their little pennies, scrape them together, and they get their digital cash, or they put it on credit, and they run and get the new iPhone. It's like, how many people would run and get the iPhone if they actually had to mine all the raw materials in it? So if before you had an iPhone, you had to actually go down, a mine somewhere in the Congo, you had to replace the little kid that goes down that cobalt mine to get your cobalt. If you had to do that for 3 weeks to give yourself, and did the same in a copper mine, and say you had to do that first before you could own any one of these gadgets. And then you had to do 3 months in a cobalt mine or 3 weeks in a cobalt mine to pay for a lifetime supply of cobalt that you could use in a phone. How many people would get an iPhone? Fuck all. The only reason they're doing it is because some little bastard is going down the mine, that cobalt mine, to get that shit for them. And the reason why it looks like they can afford it as a first world person, like, they're utterly unproductive. All the people buying iPhones are tapping away at a keyboard doing absolutely fuck all. It's like, it's zero productivity. It's just rearranging bits. But they tell themselves, well, I've got enough money to put this kid down a cobalt mine. And you say, only because of the gun, only because of the financial system, only because of the industrial system, then you are a house slave that basically is riding this poor little kid down this cobalt mine. But if you actually had to pay, so in other words, what I'm saying is you're freeloading on his productivity. If you had to go down that actual mine and produce that shit that goes into all your crap, you wouldn't do it. You absolutely wouldn't do it. If you had to do time to actually serve the real goods that go into that shit, you wouldn't do it. You wouldn't have a car. You wouldn't have a fucking trip on a plane. You wouldn't have a cell phone. You just wouldn't do it. Why? Because go down a fucking mine. Go down a fucking mine and see what it's like. You wouldn't do it. So you're a hypocrite. You're an utter fucking shit.
Hugh, I want to go back for a minute to Slovenia. When I was looking at that fellow's, looks like he's got an old farmhouse that he's restoring or something. And there was another video popped up on YouTube about a priest in Italy who'd taken 3 years off and gone to live in the mountains somewhere, and he restored an old farm cottage, stone cottage, and he was sort of up there living as a hermit's lifestyle in the mountains, and he was saying that actually a lot of those, I think this was in northern Italy, in like mountainous area, and he was saying that those areas are actually very depopulated, and that there are a lot of abandoned old farmhouses and that there. And you sort of had the impression that it was a little bit of a scenario like what you were saying about the people buying gas instead of collecting wood. Is it maybe people had left their rural lifestyle and moved to the cities and just abandoned their places in the countryside? He was saying he bought this cottage for 20,000 euros or something, and it was interesting because he was sort of showing panning out across this beautiful valley, wooded valley, and you could just see, here and there was some little cottages buried away, and apparently there's nobody there. He said his nearest neighbour is some guy in his 70s, a couple of kilometres away.
Okay, so this is a very important point, and I'm very, very glad you raised it. So, okay, as particularly Anglophiles and people that say live in LA or London or something, we have a very definite idea of, the Wogs started the Danube, how they used to say it. We are very centered on the old Roman world and the Roman Empire. So, basically everything past the Danube is kind of like primitive and scary and no man's landy and stuff. And so, and when we talk about collapse, we talk very much about, our Hollywood, very insular idea. And the wilderness is very definitely from a National Geographic documentary. There's wilderness in Africa. There isn't. We have this funny view of the world that's kind of completely made up and false. So now this is desperately important, because if you're going to survive, people say, well, should I hook up with people in the Amazon or something like this? We have a very distorted view of the world and demographics, and which bits are safe and which bits are good for survival. So what you'll find is, if you go to places very close to home, I'm talking about so close to home, I'm talking about Italy, Greece, all the Eastern Bloc countries, all of these things, right? They are depopulated because of the EU and industrialism and stuff like that. Because they're not on the map, because shit doesn't happen there and you don't get all these dramatic things from CNN headlines, then they're completely out of our consciousness. Now, to survive in this world, I think you've got to learn to appreciate gray and appreciate blind spots. You see, everybody else has this this kind of herd mentality where everybody, you go, oh, Bitcoin, and everybody, oh, they rush for the Bitcoin and survival this, and everybody, you see, you must start to think in a different way. Is find the shit, the gaps that people are not seeing. So it's an elaborate way of saying you've got to be contrarian, and you've got to look for the boring, the least action, and all the stuff. Everybody's looking for the action. Everybody's looking for the opportunity. Everybody's looking for where the risk and danger is. So don't. Look for the bland, the ordinary, look for the bits that people have missed. And once you get into that mindset, they're fucking vast and close at hand. So Greece is a very personal example. There's tons of shit. Their houses, there's land. I mean, you talk about guerrilla gardening on a fucking, piece of Los Angeles or something. It's like, you can farm a fucking island here. There's nobody there. There's a one house on some of these places that I could show you. There's one house. It's basically an absentee landlord, and it's some dispute in the family. And the family lives in Athens or in America or something, and they're never going to fucking get rid of this property, because every time it comes up in family conversation, they immediately have a war. And so this is over and over. The boundary disputes. It's the fucking Wild West, and nobody knows. Because basically when they come out here, they come out to all the tourist spots, and they don't actually go and get into the nitty-gritty, right? All the bland bits, all the stuff. And then once you start doing that, you start realizing everybody's in upside down world. The boring bits, the bland bits, the gray bits are the most fascinating and interesting and deep and varied and stuff. And so there's, just like you're saying, is that there's this abandoned land, there are these utopias of untouched thing. No scientist is ever going to write a paper on it, because, if you're a scientist, you go big and you do go and study the Amazon, and you go and talk about Manga Bay. And so we get stuck in this narrative, which is utter bullshit. And so there's this golden opportunities all over the place, but they're hidden in plain sight. But to get to them, you just have to do contrarian thinking. So what's contrarian contrarian thinking. Well, I'll tell you, it's like I lost all the gold that I got, but I could have been fucking super rich on gold because I had money during the .com era. And so basically in like 2001, I asked this guy who I thought, well, everybody, the economy's going mad, investments are going mad. And I thought, well, I don't want to invest in the latest thing because it's almost definitely, if it's popular, it's going to crash and it's useless. So what do I invest in? So I thought, well, my boss was a Canadian guy, and he was very, very conventional but well-read, middle-class guy. And so, I went to him and I said, like, he was all big into investments and investing and the best things since sliced bread. And I presume now he must be up to his elbows in Bitcoin if he's not ruined. But anyway, I said to him, like, okay, yeah, you've got all the great investments and all the good things to get in. What's the shittest investment you could possibly think of? Go away and tell me what the shittest thing to invest in is right now. And he came back and he said, I've got it. He said, gold. Says gold is a useless fucking investment. It's just pointless. So I immediately went out, stocked up on a few $100Ks worth of gold bullion. It was $275 at that stage. It wasn't long before it went 1,800 close to 2,000. So you must find out what's boring. So if you ever hear people say, "Oh, this is boring," that's boring, and they're like, that's where you want to head. Go away from the interesting shit and head to the boring shit. That's the best survival tip I could possibly give you.
Even
head for the boring shit. No.
Mario's still saying that about gold even now, though, on his channel. That people are still tending to buy paper silver and paper gold and completely overlooking what they're missing. They're just still part of the system with their paper. All
the exciting shit is in the dull. No? All the opportunities are in the doldrums, right?
Yeah. No, I was thinking.
If everybody's running after the rabbit, it's like, forget the rabbit. Let everybody else chase the rabbit. Let everybody else run away from the line. Go
it's
and
a
find
thing
the
that I've
boring
often
stuff.
thought about.
That's where the interesting shit.
I've often thought about this regarding the United States, because just from watching various videos and things that come up on YouTube now and then, you get the impression that there's a huge amount of a large numbers of abandoned buildings and in urban areas and around the place, which appears nobody's ever going to come back to them. So there's a lot of scope there, which people don't seem to be taking into account.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this a number of times. But associated with all of those things, what you'll find if you start getting into this mindset is you will find that they're underground societies. So, while we go on and on about all the stuff that appears in the news, that it's just the tip of the iceberg. The 90% of shit that really goes on, particularly in a place like America, is going on underground. So you will never see it. This is inaccessible to reporters and stuff, again, because it's not sensational enough. So it never appears in the mainstream consciousness, but it is the bulk of the iceberg, the 90%. And what I mean is there's a sewer people. There are whole cultures. There are hobo cultures and subcultures and stuff. They are living and thriving under the fucking pavement, almost literally. So if you go and try and get into abandoned building and stuff, you will not find, oh, you're the first person. Oh, I'm white middle class and I just made this breakthrough that these things are empty. No, they're not. They're filled with this underground culture of people that, all sorts, man. If you say like, they say like, find the others. What they mean is like, go on the internet and find like-minded people. And they say like, no, the others are under your feet. The Morlocks are almost literally living in the sewers. There's whole cultures of countercultures living right below the flagstones that are utterly outside this 10% little sliver, which we think is the whole world. But I mean, it's everywhere. It's like I tell people that like the majority of the internet is the dark web. People don't realize that. They think it's all Zuck and all this blah blah shit, and say no, that's a tiny little fringe. The vast majority of shit that's going on is the dark web, and it's basically the dark culture. And within our cityscapes and our seascapes, you know, they're all these, you know, like, guys, yeah, people are not as dumb as you think. Just because you're a fat, well-fed, caged liberal, it doesn't mean everybody's that fucking stupid. Not everybody is as stupid as people in say XR. Like loads and loads of people know what's fucking coming. So they've been prepping. So finding the other means dropping out of this bullshit. So I mean, I'm coming into the lunatic asylum and your death camp, but like I'm not of your death camp. I'm just infiltrating it so that I can basically find people and haul them out. But you can haul yourself out by getting in contact with the others. All it is just drop out of your milieu. Just drop out of your people with, you know, fucking shit for brains. Just basically go and talk to a homeless person. Go and talk to some renegade. So if you're middle class, you cannot see these people. I'm telling you, there are literally ghosts walking around places in America. There are cultures of paranormal beings walking around on the streets. If you're middle class, you cannot see them because you're always rejecting them. You're like, oh, there's a homeless person. Oh, there's a weird person. Oh, there's a cop. Oh, there's a rich person. You're busy editing out your entire worldview as you walk down a street. And you wouldn't dream of stopping and talking to a crazy person. Stop and do it. You will find as world opens up that fucking you suddenly realize, hang on a minute, you mean all this, you know, all the thing that you think is the whole world is just this tiny sliver? And say, yeah, the big dark culture underneath is basically, that's where it's at. Get in contact with that. Go and do something unusual, and you'll start to see all of these things going on. The police and stuff, they know all of this. The police have contact with all of that other world. A policeman knows that there are all these subcultures and stuff. But while we're doing all the culture wars and the gender wars and all of this shit, it's like it's utterly ephemeral. It's like shit going on in the first class dining when it's like we don't even know of the millions down in steerage, and there's like, these guys are not stupid. They're close to the water, and they know the water's coming up on the Titanic. So if you're talking about survival, it's like, stop jabbering about, to people on first class dining, because they'll be like, oh, I think he was full of it. I don't think that, the Titanic is going to sink. I have this friend who's actually in academia and very well known, And you're like, don't talk to those arseheads. Go and talk to somebody in steerage, and they'll say, dude, you wouldn't believe what it's like down there. The water's coming in fucking fast, and the ship's going to sink. Which one do you want to talk to? Well, everybody talks to the bloody fucking Toff. So like, Toff's done our shit. They haven't been down in the engine room. Okay, and I mean this all over. I mean this in the scientific community. It's all like, oh, here's a big name. Well, write him off immediately. Go and talk to all the little fucking grubnuts who government scientists that are at the bottom of the fucking scientific community in the Arctic or something, in some station, and they say like, you will not fucking believe the shit. So you go and talk to the guys at the bottom. They will tell you all the shit that you need to survive. But your whole world's going to disintegrate. It's going to break up like fucking Arctic ice as soon as you start talking to real people. Get in touch with the real people.
Yeah. No, I had a few experiences like that out on my bicycle exploring places, because you can, on the one hand, you can cover a bit of ground, but on the other hand, wherever you're going, you're moving slowly enough that you can see things that other people miss. And, you're not taking the main street, you're going up some little back alley, place where people don't normally travel, and it's you know, the number of times I got a little glimpse into these other worlds, you know, and you really start to feel it, the existence of this different culture going on just around the corner, you know, or behind a wall somewhere, or you know, uh, it's very interesting actually. It's just opens up a whole different perspective on existence. Um,
So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's because you're
yeah,
not.
so I guess we should
I
go
was
on.
just gonna say, yeah, because you know, being on a bike or walking, you're more in touch with your senses. That's the main reason why I hate cars. I can't smell anything. I can't feel anything on my skin. Yeah.
yeah, and you can't go.
Yeah, and
You're
also you
going too
slow
quickly. You
down.
can't see things. Um, you know. I mean, I always rather liked it because I like to keep to myself, and I found it enabled me to pay close attention to things, but at the same time, if I didn't want to get caught up in some situation, I could just move away from it fairly quickly without any bother, you know, which is hard to do if you're walking and you've gone up the wrong street or something like that, you know. You can get cornered. Um, but yeah, there's also that sense of just, it's also a sense of what Hugh was saying earlier about, you know, guests on his boat boiling up a liter of water to make a cup of coffee. And, you know, when you're moving on a bicycle like that, you're responsible for your own transportation energy, and you know what that means, and you know how to use it wisely. Um, and there's also this wonderful feeling of, yeah, I think it's very much the equivalent of the kind of euphoria that Hugh gets from sailing. Uh, is you know, I think you can get that on a bicycle too. Very much the sort of
Yeah,
feeling of independence and
Yeah,
freedom, you know.
you can feel like you're flying sometimes too, which is nice.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but
I think there's a lot
yeah,
in it.
but well, yeah, but particularly on a boat. So on a boat, the sailing community is very multi-layered, and there are many subcultures and shit that the shit that goes on in the sailing community you would not fucking believe. But anyway, I definitely have my hopes and survival strategy pinned on the waterfront and the sailing community. I can't tell anybody enough of once you
Yeah.
get immersed in it, you find it's another world. But yeah, I guess we should wrap it up because been going for
Okay.
a couple of hours. But I just want to tell you, I just want to tell you one story about this mentality of getting out of the world of appearances. So the middle class and the upper class live in a world of appearances, and the only reason this whole tissue of lies and this industrial system that's completely unworkable and unsustainable and has no future, the only reason it appears to work is because it works from appearances. Everything is appearances. The government appears to be stronger than it looks. The police are hanging on by a thread, but they appear to be a big force. Everything is kind of opposite, and it's all based on appearances. And so let me give you a graphic example of the story, which I'm not sure I told, but anyway, I'll tell it now. So here's one story of how I got through the border in South Africa. I managed to get through. I managed to get into South Africa without going through passport control, almost by accident. And so, but I'll tell you how I did it. Um, so yeah, so basically, I arrived on a plane, and um, but it's like one flight from civilization, say once a week at this place. And so, everybody, you have like, I don't know, 700 people. They're all, queuing up to passport control. It's a big mess and everything. So I ambled off, two gentlemen from Verona style, trying to be the last. I hate crowds and lining up and do anything to avoid it. So, you know, I went and saw all this thing and see that they have like 10 customs agents and passport agents and stuff. And I thought, oh, well, this is going to fucking take hours. And they were, you know, they're being a bit brutal and officious and, you know, pretty Nazi. And so I thought, well, fuck this. I'm just going to I'm not going to get involved in this. I'm just going to wander around the bits of the airport that I can. And, you know, just so I don't have to get involved in all this mayhem. And so then I started wandering around, and I found you could get to all these places in the airport. Obviously, you know, they have barriers and stuff, so you can't pass. They've worked all of that out. So, but you know, I just hung around, had a look, went and sat in the sun in some places, and I went and found, and there was one of these people from, you know, the other world. There's just some guy with a mop somewhere. And so, you know, I'd been to Africa for about a decade, so I went and spoke to him. And he was kind of amazed because here's this white guy coming in and talking to him, and so I had a wonderful time with him, and he, you know, gives me tea and gives me a joint, and we have I got, before I'd even got into the country, I'd already had a deep insight into the country and where it's going all through this guy. And so, you know, I spent ages having, you know, a super time, you know, and eventually I thought, well, fuck it. I better go back and probably all these guys, you know, a few hours have gone by. I better go back and go through passport control now. It's probably cleared out. And when I came into the passport control hall, it was empty. All the 700 people are cleared out. So the 10 customs guys, passport control, they were all gone. They'd all gone home. So I just walked through, went, oh, well, fuck it, and just went through into the country. Now, you see, all those 700 people, they played the game of appearances, that this is a passport control barrier. You're now coming into the country. Therefore, you have to go through all of this shit and get, you know, searched and abused, and they all went for it. They all stood in line to get abused. And I was the only one that said, fuck this, and just you know, said, I'm not doing it. And then I didn't have to. You see, it was all a big chimera, all a big front. It's all just appearances that now there's a big border here and you have to go through it and we have to abuse you. And it's all this big ritual. Everyone, 700 people, 699 people thought that this was how the world was. And so, like, you know, you could just go have a good time with one of the, you know, sewer people, and you just walk through like you're royalty on a purple carpet. So that's my little story, is don't you forget it, that all of this stuff is horseshit. It's all horseshit,
Yeah,
left and right.
that
And
reminds me of
so
that little George Carlin quote where he says, "I'll save symbols for the symbol-minded," when they're talking about like the flag and stuff.
yeah, but they're all appearances, and the only thing works. The only reason why passport, you see, if all 700 people did what I did, passport control would be impossible, and you'd have the anarchist dream of just having no borders. But the reason why borders work is because people appear in border posts, present their passports and stuff, and play this game of appearances. If everybody went, I'm not going through this border post, just went and, you know, there's a fucking forest track 2 meters to the fucking, you know, to the left of the border post. Just take that one and go around it. It's like nobody does that because they're appearances and the rules, and there'll be big shit if you do that. Horse shit.
What you reminded me of,
Consequences.
Hugh, I think that's a very important story. I've done some things like that, not quite as to that extent, but smaller things where I have noticed. I began to notice that if there's some requirement that has to be satisfied, and for one reason or another I hadn't been happy with it, I would just do nothing and just string it out and string it out and string it out, and you reminded me of it because a number of times in the end that after several months or a year or whatever had gone past, and you checked up on it and you suddenly found that it didn't matter anymore. that you didn't have to do whatever it was. That that had gone past its expiry date. That all you have to do is just hang out for long enough, and assuming they're not in some situation where they're going to try and come and find you, I guess. But I think currently with just what everybody's going through now, I was just thinking about that this afternoon with the vaccinations. Is by the time that everybody's being required to have one every second month or every Monday morning before going to work and all the rest of it, they're going to start losing count. It's going to become too difficult. I think at some stage the whole thing's going to sort of become unwieldy and impractical. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a bit optimistic there, but I think there might be some
This
benefit.
is what I'm encouraging this line of thought.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
This
I
is
mean,
exactly the line of thought.
if you can hold out for long enough, you might actually just find that you're better off because you haven't taken a risk with the whatever is in this stuff, and B, you might find that it just gets into be a post-injection society where it's okay, it just doesn't fucking work.
I'm speaking in code, and you can only say so much. But you nailed what I'm trying to tell people. So it's like you got to become Greek. So the Greeks have spent 400 years under the Turks. Brutal people, horrible people, disgusting, genocidal shits. Turks, all of them, not a single one is good. If you've ever met a good Turk, he's just pretending so he can get close to your pocket or your wife. Anyway, I can't say enough horrible things about Turks. Anyway, so get Greek. So this is how the Greeks work, right? So you get the government in Athens and Syntagma Square. There they will pass something saying like, okay, everybody gets €100 fine if they're over 60 and they won't get the jab. So now, sure, you get a few riots by the kids and stuff in Athens, but the average Greek doesn't give a shit. It just passes over them like water. Say, why? Well, if you're English and law-abiding and you follow the rules and you make sure that you appear at passport control, then you go hysterical because it's like, oh, this is terrible. And so look, first of all, 100. If you didn't want to get the jab and you're rich, it's just a tax. You just pay the 100, and why the hell not? If you're rich, it's just nothing. If you're poor, then what the government says is, oh, we're going to take it out of your pension and we're going to deduct it automatically and stuff. And so like, you see, well, the Greeks are very, very casual about it because they know it's almost uncollectible. It's like, how could you collect them? Even if you got it out of the taxes and stuff, out of the pensions and stuff like that, there's always way around. It's like no Greek is dumb enough to survive on a government pension, right? I mean, the very few people that would trust, the government to support them. They all have some hustle on the side. So even if you took 100 out, they will make it back with a vengeance. So just think about it. Just think if you got the police or something to go around and try and wheedle $100 out of people every month, right? That's all they would be able to do. They wouldn't have any time for anything else, and so everybody else could make out like a bandit on their side hustle because and the police know that. So everybody knows this is bullshit. But but it appears in the papers and the rest of the world, and say this is a foretaste, and it's like you say, well, if that happened in Britain, you'd be in trouble. Why? Because everybody basically goes for the bullshit. Everybody's law-abiding. So if everybody's law-abiding, you can be as draconian as you like, and all the sheep go for it. You see, if the sheep will refuse to basically go along, you can't be totalitarian. So if your government's totalitarian, who do you have to blame? It's you. You permitted it. You went along with it. Right? It's like, it doesn't, if you George Monbiot and you mouth off on YouTube about how, the government is getting authoritarian and that, you're a government stooge. The government wants you to make that video. The government wants you to be scared. The government wants you to think that you cannot get out of it. If Monbiot went and made a video saying like, guys, you don't have to do this shit. It's like, here, these are all the ways you can wheedle around it. Here, make an underground culture. Just fucking, the message the government is trying to say to you by saying you're not allowed in all these places and unless you're all these conditions, that's a subtle hint from the universe to tell you you never wanted to be in those places in the place. It's like hookers and drug dealers. It's like Mr. It's like Back to the Future. It's like Biff's. If you're in Biff's world and Biff says, if you don't do the shit that I want, I'm not going to let you in the casino. I'm not going to let you in my brothels. I'm going to start restricting your alcohol. It's like, what's the fucking message there? You didn't want to do those things anyway. It's kind of a hint that you shouldn't have been doing those things anyway. So Mr. Biff has just told you exactly the way to go. It's the way he told you not to go. So just bear that in mind all the time. Is all these things are appearances. They're all ways of intimidating you. They're all ways of making them seem in control. And it basically, if the population started to think like a Greek, you just think, come to Greece, Mr. Turk. Come, you invade Greece. We make sure you very, very sorry, like the Germans. Ha ha ha. That's how you got to think. Come with your authoritarian. We see who fucking winds up with the prick. Straight up the ass, Mr. Totalitarian. So gotta think like a Greek, man.
Yeah, I can remember when I was younger. In the post-war period, a lot of Italian and Greek migrants came to Australia, and of course, it was pretty well a conservative white enclave here, having got rid of most of the Aborigines a long time before. And, a lot of people didn't like them. And it was, even when I was at school, the Italian kids would associate with the Italian kids and nobody else, even if they'd been born here. There generally wasn't a lot of mixing. But one thing that was a bone of contention was that they were extremely good at working the system and getting all sorts of benefits and things that the established Australians were thinking, hey, that they're cheating the government. He's got a pension he doesn't deserve. Somebody else got compensation money they didn't deserve. They're working our system and all the rest of it. And you could see where they were coming from because the country they had come from, this was normal survival practice and everybody did it. And they would come here and see absolutely no moral reason at all why they shouldn't just continue doing the same thing. While all the law-abiding, residents of Australia were saying, "Oh no, you don't. That's not. You shouldn't do that kind of thing." When they could have been doing it all along too, most likely. But yeah, you get that. These were generally people from less well-off people who had obviously come here for so-called for a better life, So they were coming from a position of in Greece and Italy where they would have been very accustomed to living between the spaces and, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So this is a very important point. It's like, so the Survival 101 is you've got to learn to work the system. Nobody's going to make it through the collapse of this global industrial system that obeys the rules, right? That's a given. Is if you obey the rules, you will wind up smelling gas. I'm telling you, that's your destiny. Is you got to go against the system, and you got to learn to work the system. Now, what all the socialists and goody two shoes, liberals and middle class house slaves say is like, well, if everybody thought like that, then the whole thing would fall apart. And I say, yes, genius, the whole thing would fall apart, and that's what needs to happen. We need to get to the thing where everything, the whole fucking scheme falls apart, because you are making a little bit of you're freeloading nicely, but for pennies as a house slave. But your compliance as a house slave is making the plantation owners make out like bandits. And so you have false loyalty to the top. You house slaves, you liberals, all you fucking momboyots, your actual loyalties are to the bottom. Right? You are actually a slave, and don't you fucking forget it. And so as a slave, you do not want the plantation. You've been bought cheap because basically they allow you in the house. You don't want to be a house slave, you want to be free. So basically we want the system to come down. So yes, work the system to your benefit, and basically make sure that everybody does, and then it'll, the plantation system will end. All the plantation owners will be on their ass, and then we'll all be better off. Plantation owners, house slaves, and the field slaves. We'll all be better off when the plantation goes. But while you support the plantation, we're in shit and heading for gas. Right? This plantation is a labor camp. It turns into a death camp. That's its destiny. When times get tough and they can't feed it, if you don't believe me, have a look at Turkey. 3.6 million people are kept in concentration camps. Why? Because Erdogan is in the privatized prison business. He made a deal with psychopath Merkel that she gives him 400 euros a head every month to keep those guys in camps and out of Germany. That's Angela Merkel's legacy, is a death camp. So it's fine while Europe can pay 400 euros to Erdogan to keep these people behind barbed wire. That's fine, all fine and dandy. What happens when Germany can't pay that 400 euros anymore? What happens when Erdogan can't pay? Do those people get released? Do those people get sent to Greece? Do those people, go to Albania or something, or just, go to Skopje or Macedonia, or, do they go to Russia? They go into the fucking gas chambers. Angela Merkel knows this. She did it knowingly, knowing the history of her own country. She knows what putting people behind barbed wire is going to do. They are there while Europe can pay 400 euros a head per month. Telling you this now. Comes the financial Great Reset, Europe will not be able to afford this privatized prison business that it's in. And Erdogan is going to use these people for dog's meat. He can't release them. He can't feed them. What do you think is going to happen to them? So now, if you think that this is something in the Middle East that doesn't concern you, no, it's the forerunner of you. You are seeing in slow motion what's going to happen to you in London, New York, Paris, Munich. Look, people, there are 7.8 billion people on this planet. 220,000 surplus net every day is added. Elon Musk says, oh no, the biggest crisis is that we don't have the fertility, and we're not going to have enough people. Look, 220,000 people net increase per day. That's surplus. You tell me where this ends up, okay? And you think you're going to, just because you're a house slave, you're okay? The house is going to burn down, damn it. Whoa. Learn to work the system. The system needs to come down. Okay, well, that's probably enough for today.
Yeah,
but anyway,
thanks.
all of this has been under the rubric of surviving the flippening. step one of surviving the flipping is survive the collapse of the global industrial system. And I'll put this all in the manifesto, and I'm working on the manifesto, and I'm sorry, but there's so many distractions. There's apparently this disease going around the world, and it's distracting. But I am working on it, and I will get to the thing. But in the meantime, on XRMed and stuff, that suddenly we're getting a bit more exposure. There are a lot more bots and a lot more trolls, and it means that so can you try and publicize XRMed? Try and get members on XRMed so we can get to 1,000 people, because I'm saying if we can get to 1,000 members on XRMed, then we can pack it in, forget about XR, wave goodbye to XR, and move on to the Extinctionati sub. I just say let's get to 1,000 members by working together, by hook or by crook. Let's get to 1,000. It's getting a little weird on XRMed because there's we kind of been noticed. So you're getting a lot of shitheads and people with lots of digits behind their names and stuff, which are bots and state agents, stuff like that. So let's just get up to 1,000 members and let's get out of Dodge, and then we can just leave XRMed as for archaeological purposes and move on to the next phase. Anyway, don't forget that on Tuesday it is the new year, the real new year, not the Gregorian shit. It's don't forget to do something with the sigil and take a movie of it and then post it on XRMed the next day. Just upload it so we can all enjoy what you did. And Happy New Year!
Oh, I have a quick suggestion that I actually thought of a couple days ago. So the symbol, right? The Extinctionati symbol. We should make like posters and then have like a QR code put in the very center of the axle. You know what I'm saying? That links to the flippening
No,
website.
the other way around. Actually, you can put an image in the middle of a QR code rather than the other way around.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know how to do that.
The QR
but...
code allows for an image in the middle. Yeah, you just
cool.
find a QR code for anything. You can put image in the middle, and then it's
Yeah, that'd be cool. Then we can use those as.
You can have anything you like in the text of the of the QR code. You can have you can have words or URL, anything. But generally, it's a URL.
Yeah, because that'd be pretty good, because that symbol, people would be like, what the fuck does this mean? And they'll probably want to scan it. Just like putting, just a weird esoteric symbol out there might just, capture their imaginations as propaganda posters.
Yeah, so this is what I want you to do in the next phase. What I'm hoping is, you see, this is the way I'm thinking, is the manifesto lets everybody know what we're all about for the first time without any frills. And so then we'll be able to do things like QR codes pointing to the manifesto. And then you can put the QR code on all sorts of things. You can put it on, provocative posters, on shit that, gets people animated and excited, and, outrageous things. And, I want to take it into the metaverse, right? So one of the things, I think the metaverse we should get into when Zuck comes, it'll be absolute pain. It'll be worse than social media, but it's such an opportunity, because it's you see, I think that Zuck's priests won't be able to keep up with the innovation. So in other words, I'm sure they will try and make it all safe, but I don't think that, it's kind of like a moving battlefield, and so they won't have thought of everything, and there will be plenty of opportunities for us, because that they won't have stopped you putting QR. For sure, you'll be able to upload images, then they'll try and do shit where they try and censor the images and stuff, but it's so subtle. I'm sure they didn't think of you putting QR codes on shit and stuff like that, or putting provocative objects and stuff like that. So I think it's a very fertile ground for subversion and recruitment. And so well, for a while, I mean, I think the fate of the metaverse is, I think it's the end of Zuck. I think it'll have some novelty value, but like I think that's the end of him. I think he's finished after this. It'll be very unpopular soon. So anyway, but for a brief time, it's a recruiting vehicle, and I think now we must start popularizing and spreading the word about the flippening. And so this is what we'll do. But anyway, I kind of feel like it's on me to do the manifesto first, and then we can use that to point everything else to, and then we change gears and start trying to popularize this.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, the QR codes are fun. Like I've done the XR Med ones. I've been like a Pied Piper where I work because I clean a school, and I put the QR codes in binders and stuff. I'm not gonna say for whom, but yeah, I've been a Pied Piper all these years.
And yeah, I've put it in library books and all sorts of things. But the thing is, if you find somebody else's QR code, and you make often they're the same size, and then you have them around Greece for like monuments and stuff, and so you get thousands of tourists all like, there's a little QR code on the sign explaining the monument or something, and everybody goes like, oh, more information. And then you're like, what the fuck? So you can always go and put a sticker over those kind of things. And we must start doing much more of that, because anywhere where people might scan a QR code, but up until now, all the things just pointed to, say, alien script, and it's all been obfuscated. And so now if they say like, okay, we forget the obfuscation, we just go flat out and just point people straight to the manifesto, so they go, what the fuck?
Exactly.
So it's like no more subtlety. The subtlety didn't work. I was a bit naive. I thought subtle. But nobody has any curiosity anymore, and the internet doesn't do subtle. So it's like, move with the times. Subtlety's probably gone.
Yeah, as somebody does art, I definitely understand the subtlety is dead. Oh man.
Yeah, I was a bit behind there, but I'm learning. It's like no one does. It's like it has all the subtlety and nuance of a disco. The current zeitgeist.
Yeah, it destroyed people's either ability to like interpret things, or it's just their curiosity in general. I don't know exactly, but it's depressing.
Yeah, you can't get subtle in a soundbite. Everything's got to be a tweet, soundbite, a snippet. It's like it's utterly fragmented psychological and intellectual landscape. So the dialogue is cut. Everything's snap. Snapchat is perfect. Everything is a snap. But yeah, so okay, we got to play with that, and so we go like snap, whack. It's basically you have to hit people between the eyes now, I think, with if you get a gap. So just in 15 seconds you have to hit people between the eyes. It's kind of a feeding frenzy. It's where, say, the .com got to, or any kind of gold rush and stuff. Eventually you have to give a 5-minute elevator pitch, and then a 2-minute elevator pitch, and then a 30-second. Eventually, you can only launch an idea in .com if you can fit it into one sentence and punch people. I think we're getting close to that. So anyway, all the good stuff is in the subtlety. So I hope that once we get people on the hook, we can start leading them out of the dungeon and out of the cages and start explaining to them. Take them to the boring stuff and get them acclimatized to hearing again, hearing, feeling, sensing. Get them back to the real stuff. So anyway, in the unreal world, everything is a soundbite, and so it's like we got to go with that and then get people back to the real world. Anyway, just talking about the real. Let's get. Anybody want to say anything more, and then otherwise we just pause and end.
Ooga booga monkey revolution.
Well, monkey world is real world, right? So it's like get to.
I just quickly talking about putting things in library books. I was reminded of it's very old school. Joe Orton and Keith Halliwell were a couple of writers back in the UK in the 60s, I think. You might have heard of them and their library books, have you?
Yeah.
It's absolute. It's priceless.
They got sent down for that. They did.
Didn't
jail
they ever?
time for
That but they got tricked because somebody tricked them.
That's really funny. You know what that was called? Prick up my ears. That was what Joe Orton wrote.
Prick up your ears. Prick up your ears. Yeah, your ears. REARS.
Which is really, really funny for our times, right? Isn't that apropos for our times?
Yeah, I just couldn't help thinking about it while you were talking. I thought, oh wow, it's just perfect. But anyone who hasn't seen pictures of the library books, they're online. You can just Google Joe Orton library books. You'll see them. They were just masters at it. They were just, and it was just absolute sarcasm, wit, irony, and some of it, you would miss it if you didn't. You think, oh yeah, it's the cover of the book, and then if you look twice and think, oh, that's not right. Absolutely incredible it was.
It's anyway. Spoiler alert: the Joe Orton story is a very sad one.
It is, yeah.
It's basically these guys
he was murdered by the
gay anarchists in London, and it's a very cool story. Anyway, but tragic.
I mean, they were both highly intelligent people, but I think both damaged in their ways too, I suppose.
Could you link me their work, Gary, when you get time, or anyone link me their work?
Sure, I will. Yeah, okay. I'll
cool. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So if you send it in an email, I'll put it in the link under the video.
I'll see what I can find. Yeah. I just look for something to do with the books, and the rest of it's easy enough to find. Well, it'll be they'll be on Wikipedia. Okay.
Okay. Well, then let's end it off. And the quickest and easiest way to get back to the real is to just do this exercise. Just fall still, close your eyes, feel the weight on the chair, feel clothes on your skin, feel the air on your face and neck. Release all the tension in any muscle. All of that tension is based on the unreal. Chances are there are no T-Rexes in the room with you, and there are no leopards about to leap. It's all the unreal in your imagination. And in the real, you can hear the silence. You can connect with your sense of taste, smell, and come to a point of stillness. And coming out of the real and back to the unreal, we say Om Paramatmane Namah Iti. Okay.
Thanks, you.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Okay.
All right.
I look forward to Tuesday. Bye.
See you.
All right.
Bye.
See you in a little bit.